Hey everyone, this is Ross, and today we're going to be discussing how to plan setting up an aquarium. So one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make when they're starting out is they just go straight to the pet shop, see a fish they like, buy the tank there and then, put the fish straight in, and they don't really give it much thought, and it's a surprise to them that the fish doesn't survive very long. So just as important as actually setting up the aquarium is actually the planning of it and really thinking about what type of fish you want, what type of plants, or even what type of aquarium you're going to be having, because there's all different types of aquariums you can actually have. So that's where I'd suggest to start is what do you actually want out of it. Do you want a cold water aquarium, have things like goldfish and mountain minnows? Do you want a temperate aquarium where you can have things like zebra danios? They're quite easy to care for. Tropical, so from the tropical regions of the world, probably out 20 to 25 degrees Celsius on those. Or do you want salt water? And salt water can be quite challenging. So I'm just going to discuss a bit about each different type of aquarium and who it may be for beginners or experienced. So I'm going to start first of all with cold water. Probably everyone's first experience of owning fish is owning a goldfish. So people have a common misconception that goldfish will just live fine in a small tank. That's actually not right. It might be correct when they're just small, when you win them at the fair or when you get them from the pet shop if they're just little. And it is okay to keep them in a kind of 5-gallon tank or something when they're small. But the problem with goldfish is you can actually stunt the growth if you keep them in a tank that's too small, and the organs will carry on growing and eventually they'll just die because it's too small. Goldfish as well are quite messy fish, so they do produce quite a lot of waste. So the more waste the fish produces, the better filter you've got to have, the more kind of turnover of the tank water, and also the bigger volume of water to dilute the waste. Also, you're going to have to clean it a lot more. So goldfish I don't think are a very good start for beginner fish. They are quite hardy and will take a lot, but really you want a bigger aquarium for goldfish. So I wouldn't suggest you start off with goldfish unless you have a big tank, in which case it's absolutely fine. Temperate fish, this is kind of in between tropical and cold water. They can probably withstand room temperature water, not too fussed about fluctuations. One fish I can think of from the top of my head is zebra danios. They're known for being very hardy and good fish to keep. There's a variant in America, I don't think they sell it in the UK, glowfish, and that's I think a genetically modified type of zebra danio. They basically put the genes of a glow-in-the-dark jellyfish into zebra danios, and you can have kind of glow-in-the-dark fish if you live in the US. I think they still do those. So yeah, zebra danio is very good fish, and you can keep in a relatively small size aquarium, depending on the size of fish. Then we're getting into tropical fish now, my personal favourite and the type of fish I've had most experience with, so I'm probably a bit biased in this respect. I've kept lots of different types of tropical fish as you've seen on my older videos, but I haven't actually kept tropical fish in a while, so I feel like I'm the most experienced with tropical fish, so this is the type I'm going to go for in my aquarium. Tropical fish as well, you can get a range of different sizes. So I'd probably just go with something small like tetras or guppies, so you can afford to keep them in a relatively small tank, or a nano tank as they're called. Tropical fish, people sometimes think they're harder than goldfish to care for or harder than cold water fish, but in general I haven't found that at all. I very rarely get a fish die, and really in practice the only difference is the temperature of the water. And if you don't know, you can regulate the temperature of the water in your tank by getting a heater. So you look up online heaters that are suitable for certain size tanks, but the general rule is 1 watt of heater per US gallon of water. Don't quote me on that though, so just research your heaters before you get them. But with a heater, you literally just set it to the right temperature and it'll be fine for that type of fish that you've got in there. And you do nothing different really. No kind of special conditions, it just really depends on the fish. Getting into salt water now. Salt water tends to be a bit more tricky because on top of temperature to worry about, you've also got things like salinity and different parameters like that. You've also got to think about the specs of the water you're putting in the tank. So a lot of people like to use reverse osmosis water, so that's water put through a semi-permeable membrane, and it's cleaned, basically hardly anything in that water. Then you've got to add the salt in, so you've got to keep it a certain salt level. And I've known people who've lost fish in power cuts, for example. So saltwater fish aren't very tolerant of very changeable conditions, because obviously in the ocean or the sea it's a very stable place. The temperature doesn't change very fast, and whereas in streams and rivers, rainfall can change the chemistry of the water and the temperature quite quickly. So saltwater tends to be a bit more professional, a bit harder to care for. I'm not saying you can't do it if you're a beginner, but I tend to start off with things like zebra danios if you're going temperate, or just tropical fish. There is hard tropical fish to care for, but as a general rule, freshwater is kind of easier than saltwater. But other people have their theories. Discuss in the comments below. By no means am I an expert. I'm just letting you in on what I do to look after my fish. And the final one, which I forgot to mention earlier, is brackish. So this is kind of fresh water with a bit of salt added, so not quite fully salt water. And there's certain things that live in these conditions, like certain puffer fish, and also some shrimps, such as the amano shrimp. They can be kept in freshwater tropical, but they're really just breeding brackish water, so slightly salty. So yeah, first of all, decide on the actual type of aquarium fish you want, and then based on that you can decide where to go with the rest of the tank. So the example I'm going to use in this video, because I'm actually going to be setting one up in the next video, is a tropical planted aquarium in a nano tank. So I'm getting a 24 litre tank. Now I'm going to talk about the type and the size of aquarium to choose. So as you've probably imagined, the size of the aquarium depends on the size of the fish. So the bigger the fish, generally the more waste it's going to produce and the bigger tank you'll need. With smaller fish, you can afford smaller tanks, but you tend to keep smaller fish in large groups or shoals. So with those, you might end up needing a big tank if you want to keep a lot of them. So it just kind of goes down to common sense. Some pet stores, one here in the UK, Pets at Home, has made its own little system of fish points. So I bought this tank from them. It's 24 litre, and they say it's worth 12 fish points. And things like neon tetras, they say are worth 1 fish point, so I can keep 12 neon tetras in here. And for a beginner, that's fine. It's a good kind of gauge to see how many you can keep in there. So you just have to do your research and see how many you can keep, or how big a fish you can keep in your tank. What I usually do is go for the biggest tank that I can afford, and that I can afford to fit in my room or my house. So I'll find an area I want to put it, and I think, what's the biggest tank I can get there? Because really, the bigger the tank, the better in terms of fish health. In terms of maintenance, a smaller tank is usually easier to care for, because you've got to do change less water when you do water changes. In terms of type of aquarium, you've got glass aquariums in acrylic or plastic. I went for a glass aquarium with a plastic lid, and the pros of having a glass aquarium is it's harder to scratch than plastic. So when you're going around with your algae scraper on the glass, you're less likely to scratch the glass as opposed to the plastic. Another important thing to have on the fish tank is a lid. It can be kind of any shape, it can be made of anything, you can make your own, just something to stop the condensation. Because if you've got a tropical aquarium, it's warm water and you're going to get probably a lot of evaporation, and the water level can drop an inch in a week if the water's quite warm. So an important thing to have is a lid to stop the fish jumping out and to stop evaporation. The style of tank is really up to you. A lot of people get longer tanks vertically, so you can get big tube tanks or hexagonal tanks. But the thing is with these, you don't have as much water surface exposed to the air, so you don't really get that much oxygen into them. So with them you have to consider having an air stone to increase the oxygen in them. But if you get a long tank with a big surface area at the top, you have some surface agitation, you should be fine on oxygen. Cost is also a factor, so you've got to think about what you can afford. But yeah, you can usually pick up fish tanks for quite cheap. Things like Facebook Marketplace and Gumtree, you can get fish tanks second hand. People usually just give them away because they're kind of sick of them and want them out of the house. Next, I'm going to talk about what type of equipment you need in your aquarium. Now, the bare minimum for any aquarium is a filter, whether it be cold water, tropical or salt water. There's a few different types of filter. One of the most common is the in-tank filter. This just came with my tank. It's got what you call a power head on the top, and the job of that is it's basically a little motor which sucks in water from the bottom here, from the filter media. So in this case it goes through a sponge inside this little cartridge, gets sucked in by the impeller there and spit out this outlet hole here into the fish tank. This one as well, as you can see, has a little snorkel which goes up to this inlet here, and this works on the Venturi effect. So as the water gets was spitting out of here, you'll actually draw air in through the top, and the air will mix with the water and you'll get some bubbles in the water. So that's probably one of the most common types of filter. You can also get external filters such as hang-on filters, which have got kind of like a little waterfall which goes back into the aquarium. Probably you'll notice that was on Finding Nemo, that was the type of filter that was on there. They're useful because they don't actually take up any physical space in the tank, whereas these do. You've got other types of external filters such as cartridge filters. So these are big, almost bottle shaped containers, and there's a tube that goes into the tank and a tube that comes out. So there's a return, it spits the water back in, and a suction. And this is full of filter media yet again. There's also another type called a sump, so you can fill something with plants or seaweed, some type of plant that will filter out any nitrates in the water. So this is a separate fish tank which sits underneath yours, and there's a pump which returns water back to the aquarium. So there's a few different types of filter to look at. You can research all day on them, but generally the filters will be fine for your fish tank as long as you have one. The next thing to have in the aquarium, which is a must if you're having tropical fish, is a heater. Just research, see which size is right for your aquarium. I'm not going to tell you which type to use or anything, but this is just a little nano heater. So I've got 50 watt here, and try and get them with crystal glass, so they're not likely to crack if they get too hot. Very simple, you just adjust the temperature using the dial at the top. And then to keep an eye on the temperature, this is an optional thing, but I would suggest getting it for tropical fish, is a little thermometer. These thermometers you can either float in the tank or stick on the glass using the suction cup up here. And this one here has got a little useful green range, and that's the range at which most tropical fish will be fine at, so got a good peace of mind there. There's also heaters which come in sticker form, and they've got a chemical on them which changes colour based on temperature, and you just stick those to the glass. I've been told they're not as reliable as your glass thermometers, so that's something to think about as well. And the final thing to have in terms of equipment is a light. A few different types of light you can go for. This one's fluorescent, meaning it's in a tube, it's got a gas inside, like fluorescent lights you have at work or whatever, and these are fine. Some emit kind of hotter colours of light, cooler colours of light, but really nowadays you can get very cheap LED systems, so they're very energy efficient and you can get quite bright ones. But if you want to grow certain types of plants, you might just have to have a look at the spectrum and do some research on that. So it is a very in-depth topic, and I'm sure I'll do a video on it in the future. But yeah, if you want to grow plants, or corals in particular, corals need really bright light and a certain type of light. Invest in a good light for your fish tank. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is decorations for the aquarium. So these are optional. You can keep fish in a fish tank without any plants or any ornaments in at all. But it just makes it a bit more interesting for the viewer to look at. The plants obviously filter the water and improve the appearance of the tank. And things like wood give something for the fish to hide in and swim around. So there's lots of different types of decoration. Probably most thing people start on is gravel or sand. This is fluval stratum, which is a type of aqua soil. It's made specifically for plants to grow in. You can either use actual soil in your aquarium and weigh it down with gravel or sand, or you can just choose a kind of baked clay like this. So I assume this is just clay that's been put in a big kiln and broken up into pellets. This might make your tank go cloudy in the first couple of days or few hours. So just read on the bag. There's different types of aqua soils you can get. But if you're going to be planting your tank heavily like I'm planning on doing, aqua soil is the thing to go for. Or you can just use gravel and use root tablet fertilizers for that. So yeah, you start with the substrate. Dark substrates. Substrate is the name for the thing you have on the bottom of the aquarium, by the way. Darker the substrate, the more the plants, colours and the fish are probably going to pop. So I usually go for brown or black, natural looking substrates. So next thing is physical decorations, or the hardscape. So you go for things like bits of wood. This is called an azalea root. There's lots of different types of wood you can get for your fish tank as well. Get mapini wood, and this wood unfortunately floats. So I've just tried it in the sink there and it floats, but what you can do with this is you can tie it to rocks. So I've just got a rock here, going to tie it to that. I'm going to basically sink it in the aquarium and hopefully it should stay submerged. If you do soak the wood for long enough, it eventually will just sink on its own accord, but you must have a bit of air in here. This particular one's by Aqua One. You know, it's quite expensive for what it is. It's just basically a twig, and it was £5 that, so about $4 just for that piece, and I've got 2 other pieces, so it quickly adds up for a nice looking wood. But I'd assume this has been treated, you know, chemicals to make it safe for fish. It hasn't got any insects or parasites in there that's going to make your fish ill. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is aquatic plants. And aquatic plants are plants that can grow underwater. But in this case, I've bought these from Tropica, which is the main aquatic plant supplier in the UK and in Europe. And they've actually supplied them in these watertight containers, full of air, but I'm guessing, because I've only just seen these recently, it's just very humid air. You can see bits of condensation on the plastic there. And I used to be able to get these kind of submersion water, and then they give you it in a bag. You just take it straight home and plant it. But yeah, they've kind of started doing them in air for some reason. And I believe these are grown in a lab as well, being from Tropica, so you don't get any bugs or any parasites on them. Plants, if they have roots, usually grow in a pot of stone wool, which you pull off, wash the plant, and plant in the aquarium. I'll show you that in the next video. Here I've got Starigine repens. I've never actually had this plant before, but it says it's easy to grow. And this type of plant with roots growing off the main stem, you can cut into sections and plant and basically propagate more plants that way. The next plant here I've got is Java fern. This is a very easy to grow moss. On the front there, it's got a guide for you. It says easy. And as you can see there, it grows over wooden rocks. So I'm going to be tying that on in the next video. And I've just kind of grown it in some gel, like in a Petri dish. And I've got 2 Java ferns here. Probably one of the easiest plants to care for as well. Requires not a lot of light. And you just strip it from the stone wool and tie it onto bits of wood and rocks and things like that. And it slowly creeps across it. So this is just to start the plants. I'll be getting more plants in the next couple of videos. But unfortunately, this is all the types of plants my shop had in. Important thing to know about plants is they remove what's called nitrates from the water, which basically keeps water cleaner for longer. And they also oxygenate the water to an extent as well. Provide great places for fish to hide in and shrimps to graze on. Shrimps like to graze on Java moss. And fish like Siamese fighting fish like to kind of sleep on long leaf plants like Amazon sword and Java fern. So I'll do a video just dedicated to plants later on. But plants are definitely a good addition to have.